Welcome back to a special episode of Book Club Date. That's my husband, Josh.
That's my wife, Katy.
And today we are going to do a quick little review on the Lessons in Chemistry TV show, which is available currently on Apple Plus and is inspired by Bonnie Garmus's book of the same name.
How exciting.
So
Lessons in
exciting.
Chemistry is a 2022 novel by Bonnie Garmus. It tells the story of Elizabeth Zott, a brilliant female scientist in 1960s America who becomes a television cooking show host after being fired from her job as a chemist. The novel explores women's lives and careers and their struggle for empowerment in the late 1950s and early 1960s.
By the way, this is going to serve as your spoiler warning. We'll be discussing spoilers both from the TV show and from the book, so you have been warned. If you don't want any of those, come back to this episode when you do want that.
So this is the TV show,
Yeah,
kind
so
of
some
comparing,
interesting.
contrasting to the book.
Mm-hmm,
Very fun. All right.
Yeah. So first up, what did you think of some of the differences of characters between book and show?
Let's account for the differences in characters. I think the biggest departure is Harriet Sloane
I agree.
by a pretty large margin.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say for the better on the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a much more compelling B story
Yeah.
to Elizabeth's, which was nice. And it also, I did appreciate how it went into the civil rights movement at the time, because even during reading, I thought about that. And I was like, it's a lot of feminist issues, which I get.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't.
But shouldn't there be some overlap?
Yeah, it's kind of like a passing glance
Yeah.
into civil rights. So, yeah. So I think Harriet Sloane was the biggest difference, and then I think another big difference was Frask.
Yeah.
In terms of her character, she was much more likable
I thought so too.
in the TV show versus in the book, which
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Because even in the book, when they kind of come around to becoming sort of friends, you're still like, she was so horrible to begin with, though.
Yeah. I would also say that they make Elizabeth a little bit more likable.
Mm.
At the end of the TV show, she has developed her empathy, her capacity for it a bit more
Yeah.
than the character did in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the changes they made overall character-wise were for the best.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple maybe minor ones that I aren't coming to the front of mind, but they altered a handful of characters, but for the most part, very, very faithful to Bonnie Garmus's original characters.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I think some of the changes of characters, too, were just like slightly different events that occurred around them, right?
Mhm.
So, like,
Correct, yeah.
Wakely didn't perform the funeral service for Calvin,
Right.
which he had in the book,
Right.
which I thought that was a neat overlap. That didn't happen, but I did enjoy his relationship with Zott, or with Mad.
Yes,
Mad Zott.
I enjoyed it more in the show than I did in the book.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it in the book too.
Yeah.
But like in the show, it was cute, seeing how he related to her and how their friendship developed a little bit more.
Yeah, I was, and maybe it just didn't. Maybe I was on my phone or something, being a bad viewer. But the event where he gets the letter from Mad, and it's addressed to Calvin Evans. He realizes that Mad's dad is Calvin at that point, and it's like this big realization. Obviously, he didn't connect the dots, so I think he had the information to connect those dots. I just don't think it clicked until that moment.
In the show.
Yeah, like in the show. But I mean, like they were sending letters back and forth to each other. He knew Calvin was in Commons, right? That was the name of the town that he's in. Like
in the book, in the show, it was L.A.
L.A. Yeah, and so like he knew, even though he was, I think, out east at the time when they were primarily pen paling, but he knew where he was, and he ends up living there But
that was one of the differences too, because the whole reason the whole reason why Calvin in the book had taken the job at Hastings was because his pen pal had said Commons has great weather,
right,
because it's good for surfing, because Wakely liked surfing, and Calvin liked rowing, and was he prioritized good weather. That was important to him. Whereas in the TV show, Calvin already lived out in California,
right,
when they connected.
right.
So the time of their connection was later in life than
the book.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, sometimes like you can have all the information there in front of you, but sometimes like even in real life, you just don't connect it all.
Yeah.
And that was Wakely's. Oh, eureka!
Well,
Crazy.
and in the show, I kind of liked how they were pen pals till the end. Like the only reason they stopped talking was due to Calvin's death.
Right.
Whereas in the book, they stopped talking beforehand, like before he had met Elizabeth.
Right.
Calvin had met Elizabeth.
Right. But so like, I will say though, in the book, for Calvin's death, I think I said this on the podcast whenever we were doing the book club for the podcast, and I think I said something along the lines of Calvin grabbing that leash for 6:30, even though he debated it, was kind of his final development.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I think similarly, the letter he writes to Wakely is his final development. Like he's never going to be happier. Unfortunate, because if he would have lived, he would have found out about Mad, and then he would have been. But from his perspective in that moment, he was as content and as happy as one could be.
Yeah.
And I liked how it was presented differently, but it was the same idea.
Yes.
That he was content, he had developed, he had grown. And it was in large part thanks to Elizabeth, and as we find out during, at least in the show, also to Wakely, kind of just giving him friendly advice here and there.
Yeah, it's like we got to see a little bit different of a perspective into their friendship.
Right.
And how much they respected to each other and actually did influence each other. Like with the addition of Calvin suggesting chemo for Wakely's dad and
right.
things like that. So that was neat. It was neat seeing their developing friendship. I also liked how in the TV show, they basically, you find out that Calvin's at this boys' home and is running essentially an underground he's like helping the Reverend there run this underground distillery, basically. Because I felt like in the book, I was like, why would this Reverend who hates this child make him stay? Like,
right.
not want him to get adopted. Why would you have someone you hate, but you want to keep them around? And I felt this version of it kind of gave a purpose for the Reverend not wanting to get rid of Calvin. Because
a simple, clean purpose: money.
Yeah.
Right. Which was the reason given in the book as well. But this was much more streamlined.
Well, it was much more clear. Like Calvin
equals money.
Equals money, yeah, because he's basically already delving into chemistry and like building this still and kind of streamlining this process.
Yeah, I mean, and we should probably shift to Elizabeth here in a minute, but it kind of goes to Calvin's overall character, that at least in the TV show, it shows that Calvin, as far back as his childhood youth, a lot rode on his shoulders. Right? So the satisfaction of this bishop, honestly, making money for that school, because the bishop, I mean, they imply that the bishop is pocketing the money. They never say that they're struggling for money at that school. But in the book, they're struggling for money. So let's just assume the bishop was turning that money toward the school to try and make things happen.
Right.
Right. So that means a lot's riding on Calvin for that. And the satisfaction. And then fast forward to him being a world-class chemist and researcher,
Right.
and he's got, grants and everything that are riding on him that keep a lot of people employed. So when all that is to say is it was satisfying to see them connect those dots a little bit more concisely in the
Yes.
TV show
Yeah.
than in the book. So
Yeah.
hopefully that made sense. But
And then shifting to Elizabeth, what did you think of her character development in the TV show? It
first,
seemed like she had more.
yes, yeah, like again, Elizabeth, I think she starts about the same as she does in the book,
Mm-hmm.
but she develops to be much more likable in the TV
Yeah,
show
and
versus the book.
I think a little more compassionate.
Yes.
Because I feel
Yeah.
like in the book, there's a scene in the TV show where she refuses to do like this. Is it the sponsorship message?
Mm-hmm.
And so the station manager owner basically puts the show on hold for a few days and in the entire crew with no pay.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was kind of the first time where Elizabeth realized that her actions had consequences for other people as well, not just her own.
Right. And that actually kind of really develops her quickly.
It does. And
Right.
I don't think we had any scenes in the book that really got to that for her.
No, the book, quite frankly, at times, Elizabeth, especially when she became Elizabeth Zott, the chemist version of Julia Child, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say she had power trips, but she didn't have consequences to her actions,
Yeah.
or didn't
she didn't
seem as
notice
much.
them.
Yeah, right.
Whereas in this one, it was like a little more clear, a little more
Yeah.
direct.
Yeah, like her hairdresser makes it very clear,
Yeah.
this hurt.
Yeah.
This hurt everyone. Like you not doing that sponsorship.
Yeah, this was the consequence. I didn't get to see my son's it was like a
Yeah.
a sport game or a play or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I liked that she grew from it too, because then the next time she pulled something similar, she told the station manager owner person, like, if you put us off the air for this many days, I know exactly how much I need to pay the crew.
Right.
To keep, so that they don't have to worry, so that they're not disrupted. I know exactly how much I need to pay them if we're off the air for 3 days, 4 days, 6 days,
Yeah.
3 weeks.
She basically called his bluff. She did the math.
She did.
And she obviously had a bit of savings to
Mm-hmm.
to set aside because
Well, even when she took the job, she asked Walter, like, how much would this pay?
yeah, he's like, more than you've ever made, and he was basically like, it's not like he didn't even have to ask what she made before, like he just knew. So which it's funny because like nowadays, if you're an on-camera local station traffic reporter,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact numbers, but whenever I worked at a station, I heard numbers like maybe that person made like 30,000
Really?
in like 2015, right? So
Yeah, that's a lot lower than you would think.
yeah, so like my point is, like, back then, if you got into that game, if you got into the TV game and you were successful, a lot of money to be had because the competition wasn't as fierce. Like nowadays you've got YouTube, for example, and various other outlets that are competing with everyone's attention,
Right.
right? And back then it was, you would tune
It
in.
was TV.
Yeah, you would you would tune in for your favorite show.
Yeah.
So, again, she had plenty of money, and it was really big of her as a character to
Right.
put her money where her mouth was, right?
Yeah.
Literally, and
Yeah.
and basically say, I'm not going to endorse any product that I wouldn't use, basically,
Mhm.
which is a fair thing to do,
It is.
assuming it doesn't hurt anyone else. And once she realized that, it was mighty big of her. So
Yeah. Well, and I liked how she also figured out, I can get other sponsors that are aligned with
Yeah.
my beliefs and what my audience needs. And
What was your favorite episode of this show?
oh, I don't know. Probably one of the last two.
Okay.
I thought they were good. That's such a tough question.
I liked the episode with 6:30.
Yes,
And
I
how they-
was wondering how they were going to incorporate that.
They basically were like, we will do an episode that way. Like, I would have liked to have seen it throughout,
I would have as well.
right?
I would have liked a little more of it.
And I felt like that was more of like, okay, so for the people that are fans of the book, we got to at least do
Something. Like
But
this.
but they gave a whole episode to that.
Yeah.
And 6:30s was like a more of like a streamlined summary that kind of showed the moments of Calvin and Elizabeth a bit more from that third party perspective to show you, yes, they were actually in love. It wasn't Calvin. He wasn't just in lust. It wasn't Elizabeth. She wasn't just trying to get ahead.
Right.
Like, they legitimately were head over heels for each other. Right. And I think that was the purpose of 6:30. And it also kind of like the end of that episode, like Elizabeth just starts just a pregnant Brie Larson just running down the middle of the road. It's like, why are people running in the road?
There was a lot of running in the middle of the road.
Did we learn nothing from Calvin? People.
Oh, and then they had the party in the middle of the road. I was like, how can you have just this party in the middle of your street?
I mean, if you coordinate it, sure, right? And you don't have to show me that, but like
there was a lot in the middle of the road.
There's a lot just crossing
and
the road.
Especially like right after Calvin died in the road.
Yeah.
And then they're talking in the middle of the road. And you're like, guys, get out of the road.
Yeah. I mean,
Sidewalk.
I would be a little more conscientious if that situation affected my family or something. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
So, so I think the biggest departure in terms of events, though, is that B plot with Harriet, which is the Civil Rights Freeway,
right?
Which was interesting, and this is there's another one, but this first one, I thought it was interesting because she didn't win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she lost. Like, they built the freeway. I apologize for my dog Reese. He's
trying to get comfy.
He is, and he sometimes shakes. So just, whatever. But anyway, yeah. So Harriet lost. I mean, so she advocates for 7 years as a pseudo lawyer and then a lawyer.
Yeah, I think she starts off as a legal assistant.
Yeah, to try and like prevent them from effectively bulldozing her community and building this freeway, which did happen all across the country to build the interstate system. And the interstate system is for commerce and, if necessary, defense. That's always been the pitch for it. And it was Eisenhower who I think signed off on it, right? But I just thought, like, she didn't win. She thought she was. She had false hope.
Yeah, she went in thinking that they had gotten the votes.
7 years of hard work
was going to pay off.
And she lost. And I like it. Not all the time, but I do like it when things are a little bittersweet, like in shows, because life can be bittersweet at times, and you don't always win.
Yeah.
It just feels a little bit more satisfying to me. So
yeah.
What did you think of that kind of departure?
I thought it was interesting too. Harriet's husband as well.
Yes.
So in the book, they're like an older couple. Their kids are grown, living in other states with their own families.
Yeah, they're empty nesters.
Yeah, they're empty nesters. Not a happy marriage, and so I wasn't quite sure how they were going to handle that, and I wasn't sure if, because he was a doctor, which is great, but then he took like this overnight gig at a hospital, and Harriet was just wanting to finally have time to finish law school and pursue her own career aspirations. And she had put it on hold already for him and their children, which she didn't regret. She didn't begrudge her family of the time she spent with them, but she was like, okay, now it's my turn. You're back from overseas. Now it's
Yeah.
my turn.
Yeah. Her husband was also and it was World War II, and her husband was serving
Yeah.
as probably a very needed surgeon, right?
Mhm.
Probably in like a hospital, like an army hospital.
Yeah.
So I mean, like she understood, but whenever he came back, she really wanted, okay, I want some time to develop my professional skills
Yeah.
outside of the house.
So I did think it was kind of disappointing that she lost.
Mhm.
But I also get it, and I thought it was implied as well that yeah, he was going to vote their way, but someone must have gotten to him.
Oh, 100%.
Like clearly
100%.
something happened in between those two things, and the way he looked at her, like you could kind of, or avoided, I guess, making eye contact with her.
Yeah.
You could tell there was some questionable things going on behind the.
Well, it's the old boys club, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the good old boys club kind of is kind of what that was implying, and also racial discrimination. That was absolutely a thing that was occurring.
Yeah.
So,
I did think it was interesting that they put her in charge, because not only are you dealing with racial discrimination, but you're dealing with gender discrimination as well.
Yeah, so she gets like a double whammy.
Yeah.
And she and again, I'm sure y'all are tired of hearing this. She lost, which like it was kind of a hard thing to watch, because like you kind of saw it coming.
Yeah.
At like the last moment, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh no, he's gonna.
Especially when he was late.
Yeah.
But I think it also gave us the opportunity to see how afterwards, when Elizabeth goes over to their house and Harriet's just so upset and she's like, I just want to cry and eat brownies. And Elizabeth's like, well, I can help with that. Like,
Elizabeth can bake brownies.
yeah. And she's like, I brought beer.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay, well, that's a start. So it was neat. It was a nice way to see Elizabeth's empathy and development of their friendship. And I feel like their friendship was a little more on equal footing.
Right.
Almost in the show versus the book.
Right. Right.
But this Harriet was already much more confident in herself and in her desires and whatnot. But my concern then was like, I really kind of liked in the book how she secretly hooked up with Walter.
Oh, yeah.
The TV producer.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I still want Walter to have, a honey.
Right. Well, the other, and that kind of ties into the second, I think, largest change is the overall ending of this. So obviously a book versus TV show, it's an adaptation. Things will be different. People who throw a fit about it, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. So the ending in the book, it ends in Calvin's old lab.
Yes.
Right. And the ending of this one, it's the alluded to, like in the book, Elizabeth alludes to basically throwing a supper at 6 at her house for her family. Right.
For her found family.
Right. And the TV show ends with that supposed dinner, I would say.
Yeah.
So that's a departure, a little bit different. It kind of extends a step further, but then it also, Mr. Wilson, the Avery Parker Foundation, I'm not going to go into the details of all that. I'm assuming you guys have either watched the show or read the book, but the Avery Parker Foundation, Elizabeth and Matt go to the foundation and talk to Mr. Wilson. And they're very transparent and honest about, like, this is Calvin's daughter. This is my daughter. This is our daughter. And then Mr. Wilson realizes it immediately. And then they kind of streamline, and it felt like they rushed the end of Avery Parker, Wilson, Elizabeth, and Matt, and that whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel as big of a revelation as it did in the book.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and I think that's because it was just it honestly, Mr. Wilson's not really alluded to other than like a shot.
Yeah.
Maybe at like the funeral. Right. So like they didn't really build that up as much. They kind of dedicated more time to that, to Harriet's B plot. Right. So
Right.
I think that's where they
And
kind of made an educated decision there.
a lot with Parker. It's called a different foundation in the
Like the
TV show.
like the Renant or something.
Renshaw,
Yeah, the Renshaw.
something foundation in the show. Oops, sorry, I bumped the thing. And whereas in the book it was the Parker Foundation, but a lot of that storyline in the show was more tied to Mad's exploration of her family and
Right.
Oh, and that was another change was her teacher saying to Elizabeth, "Look, she's bored here. Have you thought about this private school for her?"
Right.
So
Right.
that was a smaller change, but it was
Yeah, it was overall some characters were nicer, some characters were meaner,
yeah.
right? I mean, it was you know, just to kind of summarize everything, the changes they made I thought worked well for TV, with the exception of the Rush Avery Parker revelation because if you're just watching the show, I don't care who that woman is.
Right.
Like,
I mean, they had a nice
you know.
like sit down conversation
Yeah.
where she kind of shared
Yeah.
something, shared like the connection and how she had wanted to connect with Calvin. And then I thought Elizabeth did a good job of saying, we'll need some time.
Mm-hmm.
And, was very much prioritizing her daughter's needs.
Right.
I kind of would have liked to have seen her talking to Matt about it a little bit. Like, how are you feeling? What kind of relationship do you want? Like, just let me know when you're ready. Something.
Yeah.
To kind of like give us a little closure on what's going to happen there. I mean, I guess we sort of get it because she's at the family dinner at the end, but
Right.
we're kind of like, okay.
Okay.
So...
Yeah. I mean, at the end, Elizabeth has her family.
She does.
Right. Harriet gives her a final lesson that, I'm paraphrasing here, but she basically says, Elizabeth, love doesn't have any limits.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if more people want to be a positive presence in Mad's life, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of goes back to how Calvin says Elizabeth prefers simple. Like, she appreciates the complex, but she likes simple solutions.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, Mad's happy, I'm happy, simple solution. We're not going to involve anyone else. Right. And then Harriet kind of,
opens that door
a bit and kind of makes her realize that it's okay to involve Avery Parker. Like, it's fine. Which was kind of a nice moment because I think Elizabeth probably would have just limited Avery Parker to like twice a year or something, like, which would be heartbreaking because Avery Parker's whole story, again, like, they kind of rush it.
In the book was more heartbreaking.
Much more heartbreaking. Like I get it's all condensed in the TV show and everything.
Yeah.
But that was like what was missing. That's why I didn't care about the TV show Avery Parker, because it was just, she was very rushed. Like, the first time we see her, she's on a golf course.
Right.
And then she has maybe, I don't know, 3 minutes of screen time, 4 minutes or so, right?
Yeah. And even then, it's not like, her story's still rough.
Yeah.
But
if you didn't know the context of the book,
at least at the front end, she knew he was alive. Like, he was taken away from her, despite her, protestations. But she knew he was alive. Versus in the book, they just told her he had died.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think she says in the book that she buried him 3 times.
Yeah.
Once when he was born, once when she was lied to about him dying at the orphanage, and then once was the actual burial when he was hit by the police car.
Yeah.
In the book, which was a much more just Avery's, like, the whole revelation in the chemist lab and Calvin's old lab was much more impactful. So, but
yeah, and I did think it was interesting too how they didn't go there. Like, she didn't buy Hastings in the show,
right?
And like, Fran wasn't suddenly in charge of Hastings personnel.
Yeah, because it ends with Elizabeth pursuing her PhD candidacy, which is where she was prior to coming to Hastings. before the
Correct.
sexual assault on her. So it's that I thought was more appropriate.
Probably more realistic of
Yeah.
what would have happened, because
Yeah, because you can't just buy a whole research. I mean, you can if you have the money, but
yeah.
do you honestly have that amount of money?
But like Avery had purchased it, and then
by
they
all the
put-
stakeholders.
then they put Elizabeth in charge of, like, as director of chemistry.
Yeah, which like
So
I don't
it's
think Elizabeth
still-
would maybe care for. I think she would prefer to just be a chemist.
She would just want to do her research, I would think.
Yeah, which is what you get to do as a PhD candidate. You get to pursue it. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
How do you think Supper at 6 will continue on?
well, in the TV show, she says it'll be one of you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what she meant by that. If she meant one of you will carry on the spirit of it, or one of you will legitimately be the host. Obviously, the show is hugely popular. They would try to continue it, at least at first.
Yeah.
They'll try some host somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So I think it would be interesting to have, like, women in different fields, right? Like,
yeah.
lessons in biology or
Mhm.
lessons in physics, and kind of utilize to be able to incorporate those kinds of different types of sciences or backgrounds into the cooking.
Right.
I think would be kind of interesting.
Oh, they maybe. I mean, we'll never know.
We won't.
We'll never know. We can just assume that someone worthy of succeeding Elizabeth takes over the show and
Yeah.
is brilliant at being the host.
Yeah.
Just assume that.
And I did want to ask you as well, what were your thoughts on how they did the editing that kind of kept Calvin's presence within the show?
I thought it was very well done. Because from the episode where it's very much it's the Book of Calvin, right? Is I think the title, and frankly, it's one of the more engaging episodes because we learned so much about Calvin.
Yes.
So that one, he's obviously front and center. It's kind of like a little biopic on him.
Mm-hmm. But we also had scenes too where, like, Calvin clearly was not there, but Elizabeth would glance over and see him.
Yeah, and that's a trope that's used a lot, right? Across film and TV, like a fair bit, but it's used a lot because people can relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have lost someone, and for years, maybe the rest of their lives, depending on how much of a presence that person was in their life. Sometimes you feel like you see that person out of the corner of your eye, or maybe you're walking by a spot where they used to be and you see them, right? So like moments like that. He was also a sense of calm for her.
Yeah.
During her most chaotic times, and Calvin would come into the picture. I did think the whole doctor, whenever she comes over, or whenever he comes over to see Elizabeth, and then he leaves, and then he turns around, and then it's Calvin, and she goes, "I love you," and the whole time I'm like, oh God, I hope it's not the actual doctor, and they're gonna cut back to him actually being there.
Yeah.
And they didn't, but like that was weird. So like
That one was weird.
So like, you got to be careful with that, I feel sometimes, but by and large, with that one exception, I think they all felt very natural, very, very appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But that one just felt weird.
That one did
Like-
feel a little weird. Like,
'Cause-
she would not say "I love you" to just anyone.
Yeah.
Like,
So
you can tell those aren't words that she uses lightly.
no.
But I felt like it also kind of went to show his influence on her.
Right. For a short
Yeah,
time
'cause
they
it
were
was-
together.
Yeah, because it was a lot of moments where she was connecting with other people in ways that she wouldn't necessarily have without his influence. So I
Correct.
thought it also kind of showed his influence in her life as well.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And then just for funsies, what were your thoughts on the casting choices?
I was fine with all of them.
Yeah.
I think
I felt like Mr. Wilson was like exactly how I pictured him in my
Yeah.
mind.
yeah. I thought, I forget his name, but Stuart from Big Bang Theory as
Sussman?
as Walter Pine,
I thought
the
that was
TV producer,
fantastic.
was an excellent choice.
It's not how I pictured him looking from the book, but like when you see it on the show, you're like, oh my god, that's perfect.
Yeah, like he was an excellent
great
choice.
choice.
He was really good, awkward, but like a good man, right? Just a little unsure of himself.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like a cog in the machine, right?
Yeah, a little bit flustered and overworked, and
Yeah. The title character, Elizabeth Zott, being played by Brie Larson. I thought she was an excellent choice. Both because one, she for 3 reasons, she looks that part. 2, I think Brie Larson is actually a really good actress, regardless of what the Marvel fanboys say about her. And 3, Brie Larson is, I would say, from what I've read and from my impression of the real Brie Larson, like she's pretty strong advocate for women's rights and feminism and whatnot. So I think she was an excellent choice for the character. Yeah. So I was fine and dandy with every single one of the casting choices. I thought they were all well done.
Nicer. By far. And I thought it was cute how I did think it was cute how Elizabeth was like, oh, you need a job?
Yeah.
Well, why don't I just hire you? Like, she kind of, like, it was just like a chance of running in the grocery store. And she was like, oh, well, I can get you a ticket to the show if you want. And she was like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. And then she's like, just a few suggestions, because she's one of the few people I feel like who, no matter what, will speak just regardless of Elizabeth's opinions or feelings.
Yes.
She's like one of the few people who's gonna just be like, look, you shouldn't do this.
Well, she also, there's a reason why celebrities keep an entourage around them, and usually within that entourage, there's 1 or 2 people before they were famous that is with them.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And in that similar sense, I think Elizabeth Zott, she liked having Frask around for many reasons, but I think that was one of them, that Frask had the confidence to talk to her kind of plainly and without being, Frask even says, oh, like I'm starstruck, right? Like, like in like the grocery store, but her actions speak otherwise, because she seems to get over that really freaking quick.
She does.
So, I think Elizabeth appreciated that. And I think you need that, like I think everyone needs that, at various levels. So
well, and Frask is probably like a good, like, guard dog type person, right? Like, you want her on your side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she basically tells her, like, you need someone to filter your questions.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth,
you don't have to answer everything.
Elizabeth's like, well, that's
it's your show.
She's like, that defeats the point of the Q&A. And Frask is basically like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
She's like,
frankly, I don't want to hear your skincare routine.
Yeah, she's like, I'll go to a magazine for that, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I did think it was cute when she was like, I want to tell you something. Oh, but it's not show related. And Elizabeth's like, well, but we're friends, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can tell me whatever. And she's like, I think I like Walter.
And that was cute how they end up together.
And
then instead of
him and Harriet.
Yeah, and instead of Phil dying, or not dying, having a heart attack, he just gets fired, basically, which was satisfying. Rainn Wilson, excellent choice.
Oh, great casting.
Excellent choice for that. He is so good. Yeah, it's just the casting all around was just very well done.
Yeah.
Very, very, very well done. So I always like to, I don't think we have the time for it, but I always like to play the game. If the show or movie came out in the 90s or 80s, who would play who? Oh. Right.
Well, maybe you guys can let us know your selections in the comments below.
Yeah. Let's say if the show was in the 90s, who would play who? Who would play Elizabeth Zott if this show came out in the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be a fun one. I don't
That
know.
would be fun. Yeah, let us know.
So, or if you have any other thoughts, comments, if you've seen both, if you've seen one, if you've seen the other or read the other. Yeah, do you prefer one or the other? Did you like them both? Do you completely disagree with us? That's fine.
That's okay too.
Yeah, you can let us know. So,
would you have liked more of 6:30 narrating in the show?
That's a good question. Yeah. Lots of discussion points that you guys can have down below, and Katie and I will be down there too, chatting with you guys. So, okay, all right. Do you have anything else to say? Anything more?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Okay.
At least in a reasonable time frame.
Yeah. Well, we're available anywhere you listen to podcasts, and specifically we are on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. And until next time.
Joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Until next time, that's my wife, Katie.
And that's my husband, Josh.
This has been Book Club Date. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.